Dan Rubenstein, happy April Fool's Day.
We're not doing a theme episode. Or maybe that's the April Fools of it all, announcing that we're not. And this whole thing is one big, I unfollow people on social media that are like, haha, we're going to the moon.
You told me. I didn't know you had that hard of a line on April Fool's Day. Are you anti-April Fool's Day just in general or just on social media?
I am anti in general. I'm not a pranks guy. I'm a big, old, crotchety boomer.
Not a pranks guy. You tell a lot of funnies on this show, but not a pranks guy. Interesting.
I don't like the idea where people have escalating pranks war. I am just a big, wet blanket when it comes to that kind of thing. And hopefully my self-awareness is endearing because I don't like it. I'm not a fan of the April Fools that April Fools, we're dyeing our field tie-dye because we're honoring the Grateful Dead here in the Bay Area. We're like, okay, cool. All right, we getting all these yucks out. I'm a total wet blanket. I'm sorry.
I fell, and I sent to you.
Yeah.
I fell for the Arizona State tweet that
you were one of a few people to me that have texted it to me that were like, this is pretty dope. I was like, nope, sorry.
See, that one was believable to me that they're going to a maroon field, and it's they're riding this renewed hype now under Kenny Dillingham, and it's from the official account. A lot of reasons to think, okay, maybe that could be legitimate. Places have changed their field color a multitude of times. That's not too far-fetched as compared to the Tiger Woods post that went out earlier that
what was his?
He blew out his Achilles a couple weeks ago, and he's been sleeping in a hyperbaric chamber, and he's now ready to compete in the Masters, of which a couple people, notable people fell for that. I did not, but the maroon field got me.
Here's the question, though. What constitutes an April Fool's Day, social media or fake news story prank? Because one of the people that I decided to stop following was a pizza place who made a fake graphic that was just announcing really good news for the pizzeria. They're like, Robert De Niro, this is a place in LA, that good looking pizza. They're like, Robert De Niro is a new investor. We're going to expand to new locations in LA. And I was like, that font doesn't look like it matches Eater's font. And I was like, oh, you just announced fake good news about yourself? And it's all a goof? What? I don't know. I could not be older and less fun when it comes to April Fool's Day. Also my dad's birthday, by the way.
Beautiful.
So that's cool. And I don't know. There's just something about to your point, the Arizona State field, kind of looks cool. You're just kidding. We're not doing this possibly cool thing. I don't know. It's weird to me. Cal did it with a golden field, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I think the spirit of this thing that I've already claimed not to like is being done away with.
All right. Well, we'll come back to this a little bit later on. I would encourage reballers.
Have you done anything with April Fools? Have you?
I am a prankster. I am much more. To call myself a prankster is probably a bridge too far. I am more of a prankster.
You enjoy
it seems than you. Yeah.
Yeah. You've texted. You've kept on months long, if not years long, anonymous texting of spam.
I will tell
people you're related to.
I will save this. Yes, I have. I will save this for later in the episode,
or maybe the Thursday bonus episode for patrons. Okay, you can do it for this one. But yeah, it's an insane thing to keep track of that you did.
Solidverbal@gmail.com is where you can email us your favorite April Fool's Day pranks, either ones that you've pulled on friends and family or ones that have been pulled on you. I will say I bite hard every year on April 1st because 90% of the time I don't know what day it is.
Yeah.
And I have a friend who gets me every year, different joke, but every single year I fall for something. I did again this morning. But welcome back in. This is a college football show. I am Ty. He is Dan. Dan, you are back from California. Welcome back in this episode. Our first episode of this week dropping a little bit later. We had a bunch of scheduling stuff that we couldn't navigate around yesterday. So still planning on 2 episodes this week. This one just dropping a little bit later than usual. We thought we would circle the wagons on this episode and talk through some of the news now that it has turned to April. This is not the fake April Fool's Day news that we discussed a moment ago. This is actually stuff going on in and around the world of college football. I know the way it is. I've seen the numbers for 17 years. At the end of March / beginning of April,
This is when interest is highest.
No.
This is when people are most rabid. They're like, can you preview Syracuse's schedule, please? Please.
This represents, via every ounce of data that I have over all of these years, the absolute rock bottom of the offseason.
Great. This is the best time.
This is when people care the least about college football because the weather's getting nice and there's other stuff going on that they care more about, and everything builds incrementally from here. So let's talk about the news. For those of you who maybe have tuned college football out a little bit, I'm going to give you a couple bullet points, what's been going on around our great sport. Of course, verballers.com is where you can go to get these episodes a little bit early without the ads, bonus content, Discord access, so on and so forth. Dan, did I hit everything at the top? Is there anything else we need to address here?
No, but now I have an idea for a Patreon bonus show of very common pop culture things that we've consciously opted out of draft.
Okay. That could be really good.
My first overall pick, Severance.
Oh,
I don't know what it is.
No,
I have no interest in it.
We're going to come back to this. I finally put some time in on Severance this weekend.
Okay.
It's really good, Dan.
I'm sure
it's really good. It's really good.
Okay.
Let's get to college football news.
Yeah.
We have not so breaking news.
What do we have? What are we talking?
I can do that now because the vocal cords have been healed up sufficiently from the football season.
Yeah.
I can hit that high note again. This year I'm going to record it so that it's preserved like James Earl Jones's voice.
You should tell people you did like some kind of experimental European Tommy John voice box surgery.
I got an injection like Fred Couples did in his back of the stem cells or whatever.
Yeah, we got some throat plasma going for Ty. Continue.
So the last time we did this episode together, Troy Taylor was still the coach at Stanford. No longer is that the case. Troy Taylor was fired a few days ago via Andrew Luck, the GM at Stanford. He put in place someone he knows well, an interim coach. They've assured us it's going to be for 1 year only. Frank Reich, 63-year-old Frank Reich, who has previously coached the majority of his career in the NFL, most notably, as of late, the Colts and the Panthers. He was relieved of command with the Panthers in 2023. He is going to be stepping in. Now, for those of you wondering, what the hell, how, what, why, who? It's March. It's April now. Troy Taylor was relieved of his command amid findings from two separate outside firms that said basically he had bullied and belittled female athletic staffers.
Right.
Andrew Luck, serving in this capacity, was hired at the end of last year to serve as Stanford's GM. It is believed, by the way, that Andrew Luck is the only GM in all of college football, and nobody knows this for sure, the only one with full control over a team's coaching staff. This is one of the things that we talked about on the last episode I did with Matt Brown, where it's murky. GM means something a little bit different at each school, whereas in many cases, if you go up to the pro ranks, the coach does report into the GM or some version of that. College, they're almost like at equal levels on that hierarchical structure, right? That table that you would see, the corporate ladder. Not the case here at Stanford. Seems like it might be the only place that has it structured this way, but Andrew Luck makes the move, gets rid of Troy Taylor, brings in Frank Reich as the interim coach. Andrew Luck has a pretty big task at hand here. They brought him in to try and rebuild this football program, and I guess this was his first big move.
Yeah, Stanford is an interesting, weird, unique case study. As you mentioned, the org chart, and that Andrew Luck wields an amount of power that is unique to Stanford in that he's essentially a real general manager. He's essentially like football director. There's athletic director above him who is stepping down, I think, at the end of the school year at Stanford. So there's the interesting moving pieces element to this at Stanford. Andrew Luck is the boss of the football program at Stanford, whereas a lot of GMs and directors of player personnel have different responsibilities that are more related to organizing recruiting and analysts and making sure everybody's on the same page and organizing everything, dealing with parents, dealing with the portal. Like there's a lot of moving pieces, but ultimately they're not hiring and firing coaches. They're not overseeing, investigations into coaches on that level. It's much more personnel with regard to the team based. So that's super interesting. I'm positive 133 or whatever other athletic directors would love to have this kind of position in place to take a little bit off of their plate with regard to football, especially if football is the main driver of that program. So there's an interim coach for a year. Couple questions here. How do you recruit? How do you recruit with a guy that is not going to be there in a year and you're going to high school kids? Stanford happens to be one of the very few places where like the school really does sell itself because of academics and prestige and some football related success. But who's the coach? What kind of system are you running? What is going to be the practice schedule? What is going to be the way that this roster is built? What is the NIL situation? Like none of that, even though Andrew Luck is kind of the program right now, the ability to recruit and to hit the portal, which is something Stanford can't really do all that successfully in the way a number of other programs can do because of academic challenges and restrictions. I don't know what the like medium-term plan is. It's a lot to navigate to have a guy who I haven't seen Frank Reich's recent resume, but it seems largely, if not entirely, in the NFL. And so he's going to serve as sort of a bridge to the next coach, but we don't know who that next coach is. Andrew Luck can give assurances that like this is the kind of football that we're going to be hiring around, and we're going to bring in a lot of offensive linemen, and we're going to be run heavy like we were with Jim Harbaugh. And so he can give those assurances on the recruiting trail, but Andrew Luck isn't head football coach.
No.
So
I have a question about that actually.
Yeah.
Do you like that they have given Andrew Luck this power?
Yes. Because I think the more everybody in their line of work can keep the main thing, that the best of Jim Harbaugh, the best of anybody that has coached at Stanford, successfully, unsuccessfully, whatever, is coaching football, is saying, this is how I want to hire coaches. This is how I want to run an offense. These are my priorities on defense. These are the types of cornerbacks I'm looking for. This is how I want to run practice. And then you start getting into like fundraising and scholarship distributions and dealing with, business aspects of football, which you're not entirely trained for, to bring in somebody who can offload some of that as their main thing seems like a good thing. That the best of Dabo Swinney is connecting with 19-year-old dudes and getting them to play football hard and hire coaches and get receivers playing better because that's his background as a position group. Like all of that stuff, I'm sure is preferable. You see the guys that are making the move to the NFL or like full on retiring,
right?
Because they wanted to keep the main thing. Chris Peterson wanted to develop receivers at Boise State and Washington. And when it became clear that he was going to have less and less time to do so, he became a little bit, allegedly, in his own words, a little bit like disenfranchised, my word, with where college football is in terms of what a head coach had to do. And so I think the more you can, and this is a money thing too, specialize, find people with experience dealing with fundraising, dealing with everything that has to go on that a head coach now has to do, media stuff. Like, I think it's smart. I think it's really smart. If you have the cash, sure.
The first thought that came to mind for me is, hey, is Andrew Luck also going to be hiring the Andrew Luck director of offense? Remember, they kind of gave the offensive coordinator that title. Yeah. I would assume, since it was permanent a couple of years ago and they announced it, that is still a thing. But
sure,
I kind of like this, to be honest with you. At least the persona that I think we know of Andrew Luck is that he's pretty with it, pretty sharp dude. Obviously played the game at a really high level, clearly has a level of respect for Stanford, his alma mater.
Has a connection with Frank Reich, who I think was his
last coach,
NFL head coach.
When he hung it up, I mean, kind of hung Frank Reich out to dry a little bit by leaving on him, but that's neither here nor there. So I don't mind this structure, especially at a place like Stanford that, frankly, right now needs all the help it can get. Why not use that expertise from a guy like an Andrew Luck, assuming he has it. Assuming he has it. I'm making some assumptions here, but on its surface, I don't hate the way they have set this up. And, obviously if Troy Taylor did some of these things, he deserved to be fired. They made the move they had to. Frank
Yeah.
Reich is a stopgap. I have the same questions as you. That said, you could do worse than Frank Reich. A lot of places have done a lot worse than Frank Reich in naming an interim. So clearly questions that need to be answered, but at least for the time being, Andrew Luck making this move, not ideal to do it in March, but did what had to be done.
I don't know what the roster looks like at time of recording. I saw they lost I think David Bailey, their big edge rusher, who is visiting schools like Texas Tech and Texas right now, maybe UCLA. So I don't know what the roster is going to look like, but Stanford is one of the few places, unfortunately, that can't rebuild overnight in the way that some schools are able to in the roster without adjusting a bit of their academic identity. We saw Vanderbilt bring in a ton. Not to say that the students they brought in, the players they brought in from New Mexico State, weren't up to Vanderbilt standards. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't, but they certainly were much more active in the portal than similar academic type places. Your Dukes, your Notre Dames, your Northwesterns, your DeVrys, whoever. That's going to be like 3+ years, it feels like.
It's going to be a longer term rebuild. I don't know how it can't be. I don't know how it can't be. I don't think there's any way around that. So,
and you're on a weird ACC island. So you're saying, come to Stanford. We're going to fly across the country a little bit where we have one school out west that we're going to play consistently. And the rest of it is Texas, Florida, North Carolina, New York, Massachusetts, whatever. It's a tough sell in terms of what your footprint's going to look like.
And it's a tough schedule. I think in light of this, obviously, if it were any other team, you wouldn't expect a whole lot. It's tough to lose a coach middle of the offseason, bottom of the offseason like this. But you layer on top of it some of the challenges just at building a program at Stanford, along with at BYU, at SMU, home against Florida State, on the road against Miami, on the road against North Carolina. Hey, who knows? And then you close out the year at home against Notre Dame. So it's not like they've got an easy slate in front of them here. Frank Reich's going to have a lot to navigate in his one interim season. Let's move on. Here's something else that I think is of note in the Verballerhood. It's something that we discussed because I think generally we both thought it was a pretty cool idea. It was nothing if not novel. You might recall that Deion Sanders put out this call into the abyss amid all of this talk about places canceling spring games, reformulating spring games. Maybe there's a concern about players being poached because of the spring game, because of that being available online or on TV or whatever, YouTube, you name it. Some places have gone away from that. Deion didn't want to. Actually, Deion kind of doubled down on it and said, does anybody want to play us? Can we put together a scrimmage? It might be fun to go that route with it. Fran Brown, the Franimal up at Syracuse, was very quick to jump on that. It sounds as if they tried to make it happen. The NCAA has since denied the request. They've denied the request for a spring scrimmage. They cited, per something that Adam Rittenberg wrote out on ESPN, 3 specific factors. 1, the late timing. The late timing. Most teams have already planned out what their spring games are. They didn't want to give these 2 schools the chance to do something cool, I guess, that other schools couldn't. That's the first.
Right.
The second is, and I think it's a direct result of the first, any potential recruiting advantage that could come as a result of Colorado and Syracuse holding this event of some sort. I don't know if it'd be at Colorado or at Syracuse or maybe both, who knows, but they didn't want there to be any kind of unfair advantage on the recruiting side of things because these schools were able to do it and others didn't have the capacity to do so. And then the final thing is potential academic impact. Missing classes, if you're participating in practice and scrimmage that is away from campus, if you're missing more class time than anybody had planned for, they wanted to safeguard against that. Now, notably, by the way, I don't think any of those 3 things are too off base. I would love to see this happen. I would say, in fairness to the NCAA, they did not permanently ban this. It sounds like something that they're willing to revisit at a later point in time. Mike Gundy, I don't know if you saw this, Mike Gundy also came out and suggested that, hey, maybe we could revive Bedlam with Oklahoma State via some spring game.
That's what people want. They want Oklahoma State with no stakes.
With no stakes, yeah, but at least it's, I think, more conversation around the idea. which I think is a
Okay.
cool idea
Yeah.
on its face. So the NCAA is not banning this permanently. It sounds as if they just sort of punted it because it caught everybody a little bit off guard. It was basically a tweet or whatever from Deion that came out of nowhere. Fran Brown jumped on it, and then suddenly you had people talking about this. So for the time being anyway, this is not going to happen, but I would say put a pin in it because it seems like there's at least a little bit of steam on the idea. Do you like this idea?
Kind of. I mean, I think I like it maybe a little bit more with bringing in maybe a G5 team or an FCS team that you can pay. Like, if this is something you're going to be selling to TV, and if it's indeed Colorado, Syracuse, or something like that, it's a worthwhile TV event in the spring for college football. And so I'd like to see a smaller school get some cash out of the deal. I think that would be fun to see some live action for incoming freshmen or transfers or new coaches. I think that's a cool idea. I actually kind of am okay with the NCAA saying, like, you're asking for us to sanction you doing this in a week and a half, essentially, without any considerations ahead of time of travel or, player and student schedule. And, like, just give us a heads up that's not on social media. Like, go about this in a professional way rather than just tossing it out because, like, how cool would it be? Like, I kind of get where they're coming from, that, like, there should be order to this kind of request, not throw it on our desks at 2:37 p.m. on a Friday. So I'm okay with the NCAA saying, like, why don't we just figure out what is best for student athletes first, and go from there and figure out how we can work this in the future to make it work for everybody, instead of just like, wouldn't it be cool? Send tweet. Like,
yeah, no, I'm
Yeah.
with you. I'm with you. And like it says here, the late timing is the first thing that Adam listed in his article. And I think that's totally fair. I think the other points that they raise in this objection are completely warranted as well. It doesn't seem like any of it is insurmountable.
Right. Sure.
Like, if they really want to do this, they're going to be able to pull this off probably as soon as next year.
Yeah.
So more to come on this front. If you like the idea the way I think Dan and I both do, I think this would be really cool. I think this would breathe some life into it. I don't know logistically how you would make this work because, as I think it was James Franklin said, spring games on some campuses are a pretty big deal.
Sure.
Like, the whole community waits for that event. It's something that, at least up at State College, I'm probably botching who even gave this quote, but let's assume it's Franklin for our purposes here. That date, third week or fourth week in April, is something that the entire community circles and plans around and gets excited for. And so if you start having these types of scrimmages, are you doing a split squad thing like they would do in spring training baseball, where half the squad goes to one place, half the squad goes to another? Is it a 2-week thing? Are you literally going to have years where you just don't do the spring game on your own campus because of a traveling setup? Again, I have questions about this logistically, how they would make it work, but I don't think in theory it's a bad idea.
I mean, the spirit of a spring game is to give your diehard fans an opportunity to come out and see the team, to see the guys on this year's team. And so then you take the spirit of that away. They're like, oh, no, Syracuse fans can no longer come out to JMA Wireless or whatever and watch this team. So we're taking that privilege away from them because Deion Sanders wants to have a team take on Colorado. So are players in game shape in the spring? I know they're in winter conditioning, but are you cool with sending players out to a scrimmage that's going to be on TV, that's going to have like meaningful effects about, with regard to the conversation around your team and your season based on what's happening in April when players aren't in full game shape? I don't know. It seems like a cool thing for sure. But then when you are people going to wager on a Colorado Syracuse spring game? You sort of get into like weird territory.
Well, there are a bunch of questions.
Should it be pay-per-view, raise a bunch of money for charity? Okay, I'm listening.
I think it was Gundy who suggested that they could charge something like $25 a head to get in, and the money could go towards NIL. Again, both of their NILs, the home team's NIL, I don't know. That I don't know. But at least I think it's pretty novel that they're thinking along these lines. It's something we might see happen. The way it is as we get into April, there is certainly interest in spring games, but you do something like this, I think it would breathe some new life into it, which
I would be okay with Colorado State, where the travel is a bus, right? That, I'd be okay with Syracuse playing somebody close. I'd be okay, but you start flying across the country to do this glorified fan service thing. Anybody who's been to a spring game knows it's not a game. It's a scrimmage of some kind. You're mixing and matching. You're seeing what walk-on offensive linemen look like with the threes. You're seeing what this backup quarterback can do with the ones. Like you're mixing and matching to see what you have at the culmination of largely a teaching period for a lot of these players.
That's right. At Penn State, and this is me speaking as a former student, it was a reason to go out and enjoy the sun, which is dormant for about 4 or 5 months.
I love spring games.
It's a reason to go out there and tailgate and drink with your buddies, and maybe tangentially to talk some football or go into the stadium for free and watch it. It's, I think, much more, at least for fans, circumstances around the game than the actual game.
That's why
at least that's how it was for me.
Going to spring training is great because there aren't stakes. You get to sit in the sun, drink whatever you're going to drink, eat whatever you're going to eat, hang out, and not freak out about your team giving up 3 runs in the 5th inning or something. Or
torpedo bats. Don't forget torpedo bats.
First of all, I would love to do a torpedo bat show. I would throw it all away.
Maybe that could be the bonus show.
Oh my God. Somebody coming up with a new equipment quirk for a long-standing piece of equipment.
That is 100% our jam.
I love it so much. That would be great. But yeah, that's why I like spring training, because not everything needs to be so important and serious. It's okay that you trot out, a bunch of second string defensive linemen to see who's got a great get off coming off the edge. It's kind of fun to see the little stuff. And I don't know. It's a cool idea. Maybe there's some sort of middle ground so that we can get something fun. I'd rather it all stay local. So I don't know. Keep the money in state. It's fun to me.
Speaking of Colorado, did you see that Deion got a 5-year, $54 million extension?
Good for him.
On average, it makes him the 4th highest paid coach in college football. Yeah. Clearly getting a bit of a payout after what transpired this past season. I saw our friend Andy Staples from over at On3, and Andy and Ari made the comment that even at $10 million a year, he thinks it's a bargain for Deion.
Sure.
I tend to agree.
Yeah.
I tend to agree. He's definitely rejuvenated that program to some extent.
The amount of PR that school has gotten, being on TV as much as they have, with the number of viewers and the amount of attention, it feels like it's been an unlimited amount of University of Colorado, commercials for the past couple of years.
I totally get why they'd want to re-sign him here.
Yeah.
I still have questions about the strategy for building the program. I don't know if you can continue having success solely via the portal. We do know that they've gotten some wins on the high school front, but those are still few and far between. We'll see what we get out of Julian Lewis this year if he plays at all at quarterback. I did go through and check, by the way, the class of 2026. It's very early on. So take this.
I mean, it's early signing day is early December. It's not that early.
Take this with a grain of salt. Colorado currently 0 high school commits.
Uh-huh.
And not only that, I went through the top 100 prospects on 24/7. Colorado is listed as quote unquote warm for just 2 of the top 100 recruits.
Okay.
In the 2026
Whatever
class.
that means.
So again, take it with a grain of salt. Doesn't mean everything, but it is, I think, meaningful that if you're inking this guy to a longer term extension, paying him all this money, if we're still relying on the transfer portal strategy, hasn't really been done before. Now, I was not spooked by that at the start of last season. Remember, everybody was dunking on Deion, like, oh, he hasn't done anything in high school, and it's still all portal stuff. And I said, well, let's wait. Let's see how it goes. And It actually worked out pretty well this past season, but 2025 is going to be without Travis Hunter, without Deion Sanders.
Yeah.
I was hopeful that a little bit of success, some wins in the portal would help jumpstart the high school thing.
Right.
Haven't seen that yet this
Well,
cycle.
that's if his intent is at all to be high school active, which it doesn't. Everything he's said and has done,
I know.
Actions and words have pointed to like, we're going to be a portal team and fill in some gaps depth-wise with what we consider to be special players in high school and only special players in high school.
Listen, you know me.
Yeah.
I like a good zag.
Sure.
If this is the zag and they're just going to completely omit high school recruiting from their repertoire, then so be it.
Sure.
Let's see how it goes. Who am I? Experiment away, Deion.
Defense was a little bit ahead of the offense last year. So obviously bringing in transfer quarterback competing with true freshman quarterback will be fascinating. They've lost the most talented player in the country in Travis Hunter. And so there are guys there on both sides of the ball, but it's officially like a new era of the Deion Sanders, not experiment, but the Deion Sanders era. So curious to see how it works out. The defense was a crazy impressive step forward last year. So if they can keep finding both the players and the money to pay the players, because if you're going that transfer heavy, that's a different kind of payment. It's a different kind of market. So they got to keep raising the money, both to pay now Deion's new deal and, the roster. So if they feel good about the cash influx in Boulder, I guess if it can last forever, great. But we saw him sort of flirt with the Cowboys a little bit this past offseason, and why wouldn't you? If you're Deion Sanders, with an opportunity like that, with the history you have there. But yeah, it's one of those things that, like, if he leaves, not unlike, a lot of other situations, but if he leaves, Colorado's almost in a worse place than it was.
Yeah.
So,
you're putting all your eggs in the Deion basket.
You are.
Is what you're doing here.
You are doing exactly that.
I'm rooting for him. I'm rooting for Colorado. Like I said, I love a good zag.
Sure.
And if this is the strategy, if they're going to build exclusively through the portal, if they can make it work, more power to them. One of the other things I discussed in the last episode with Matt was, and Matt brought it up, we don't have great data of sustaining success when your roster is at least 30% from the transfer portal year over year. So there's going to be a threshold, I think, that emerges the more we do this. How many transfers can you take and still maintain culture, still maintain some level of trust and togetherness on your team, and actually just to the eye look like you're on the same page?
Yeah.
Colorado's been an exception to that rule so far, but we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. Deion gets a big new deal. Here's something for the Dan Rubenstein fans among us. I don't know why I phrased it that way.
No, it's okay. I know. I'm very excited.
Coastal Carolina is going to become the first FBS school to offer free concessions this fall, Dan.
Sure.
Here is the way this works. If you buy a ticket to the game, you can go up an unlimited number of times to the concession stands and select up to 4 items.
Each time you go.
Correct. Those items include hot dogs, nachos, popcorn, and fountain drinks. Again, I emphasize there is no limit on how many visits to the concession stands you can make.
Right.
All they ask is that you have to scan an app each time so they know.
They can track your data.
I'm assuming who the professional eaters are among Chanticleer fans. But, Dan, we have done these episodes time and again in the offseason where oftentimes it's our choose our own adventure games or something goofy like that, where we address this issue of attendance.
Yeah.
Attendance, notably in college football, has not gone up. For some games it has, but overall the trend line is pointed down and to the right. So doing something like this, I don't know if cheap hot dogs and nachos is going to be enough to spike attendance at Coastal Carolina, in Myrtle Beach as a whole. I appreciate the swing, though. Like I said, I love a good zag, right?
Conway, to be clear, but yes.
Conway.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Look, if the money works out, if the private data of people is worth just as much as the average amount of hot dogs and pretzels and popcorn or whatever you said, and fountain drinks, Sure. I think it's a great idea. I think it's great to get people in seats, and you get a home field advantage when your stadium is full. I think their attendance last year I saw was about average
Yeah.
for their conference. And okay, you want that energy around the program. You want, positive press in the spring. You want positive attention. And if it becomes more affordable to take kids to a game, all the better. If it becomes a more affordable experience for new fans, for diehards who perhaps were priced out because of both the tickets and parking and whatever other costs you're incurred, right? Taking the day off from work or finding a babysitter, that you at least you don't have to worry about paying $100 that day for food. I don't know. Seems like a good thing to me. So good for them. Those seem like low cost items. So I don't know how much they're actually going to lose. If I saw somewhere like concessions were, it was like $250,000 or something like that was what they were making on average. So they figure eating that, but getting more butts and seats, selling more tickets would be worth it. So
starting the Substack based on personal data that they collect via the app.
Absolutely. No, my thing is parking, right? If you really want to get people at a game, that's free parking. Free parking is something that that's going to reach people. That's really going to sing to people. Food, like, it has that value. Parking has a value, but then you start paying $80, $100, $200, whatever, based on the size of the game. I don't know if people pay $200, but you're just like, this just feels like such a grab, and it feels gross. But I don't know. Food is that's good enough for me.
If you're a family man,
yeah.
If you take your family of 4 to, say, a Cubs game,
mm-hmm.
and you don't have free tickets, or but you're
right.
you're paying for the parking or transit, whatever, however you get to Wrigley
Take
Field.
The train into town. The train stops right by Wrigley. Continue.
You're paying for 4 tickets for you and Jody with an eye on the boys,
sure.
concessions, the whole day. What's that cost you?
Oh, hundreds of dollars.
It's not cheap, right?
No, not at all.
And so something like this, like you said, you're always looking for good news stories in the spring.
Right.
Something like this at least puts you on the radar. It has a very minor league baseball feel to it.
Great.
Which I think is great. People love minor league baseball. That's why there are so many teams out there. People adore minor league baseball stadium just as an experience. I don't hate this idea. I hope they don't lose their shirt over it. But again, taking a swing here, trying something a little different in the springtime to curry favor with the locals, I think is a pretty cool idea.
Yeah, especially if you're cultivating future fans, future players who are able to go to a game, and otherwise they might not have figured that they could afford, and swing tickets, parking, food, whatever. And all of a sudden you've got, an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old growing up as Coastal Carolina fans. And maybe one of those grows up to be a prospect somewhere in the state or nearby. I don't know. I think it could pay dividends, in the future, near future, long future, whatever. So I don't know if they're not losing their shirt, as you said, good by them.
The only other big news bulletin I have, and then just a few other rapid fire type things. Gary Danielson, longtime commentator, CBS. Gary Danielson stepping away after the 2025 season. They announced quickly that he'll be replaced by Charles Davis, who I like. I think Charles Davis is a really good commentator. He'll be with presumably Brad Nessler moving forward in 2026 and beyond. But Danielson walking away.
A lot of people, especially in the South, dealing with Danielson all those years on CBS with Uncle Vern, Brad Nessler, grew to hate him, I'm sure. I never hated Gary Danielson. I thought he was always pretty good, and you come to associate big games, medium-sized games, network TV games with certain voices, and as that changes as you get older, it becomes a little bit sad that somebody that you've grown, whose voice has been involved with so many huge games, specifically around the SEC and CBS, and Vern Lundquist being the mainstay until Brad Nessler took over. But Brad Nessler was always or not always, but was a seasoned hand. Everybody
he's a big game.
He's
a big game guy. Yeah, everybody knows that.
So that wasn't a drop off, but the familiarity with those types of games, it changed when Vern left, and it's going to change once again. And these guys have opportunities to create their own legacies, and Charles Davis has been on the mic a ton. I think, was Charles Davis with Tom Brenneman for the Boise State-Oklahoma game?
I believe so.
That bowl game. So he's like, I'm not questioning him, But it's always a little bit sad when you start associating a voice with big games and they go away. And I'm always, my college football fandom can't be separated from Keith Jackson, right? The history of my college football fandom, especially growing up on the West Coast, cannot be separated from Keith Jackson's voice. And so whether or not you've hated Gary Danielson, loved Gary Danielson, been indifferent about Gary Danielson, how long ago did he start at CBS? I think he was at ESPN before that. Your fandom is likely very closely tied to him, even if you hate him. You can't go on and watch TJ Yeldon or Mark Ingram or Ryan Perrilloux or whoever without like, oh yeah, that voice.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know.
Look, these announcers are very much the soundtrack of our fall season.
Yeah.
They are. And you come to, I think, expect a certain caliber of announcer for a certain caliber game. One of the things that came to mind first when I saw this news, I was so used to Gary Danielson calling SEC games that I could not deprogram and get it through my head that he was calling Big Ten games.
It's real tough.
I just could not disassociate. I could not get used to that.
And it wasn't Big Ten games either.
No, it wasn't.
It was always kind of like the third biggest Big Ten game. And
I really had a hard time with that. I really had a hard time with that just on a personal fan level. I'm used to the Danielson pro SEC commentary. There was a lot of it. There was a lot of SEC bootlicking with Gary Danielson. I didn't have a problem with him. Not at all. I thought he was a good commentator.
Right.
But there was a lot of that was going on that you just didn't have when he was calling Big Ten games. And for me, I just never got used to it. So maybe this will help. Not that I want to see the guy walk away. I wish him well.
Right.
I like Charles Davis. I think he's a really good commentator. But maybe refreshing that booth a little bit will help me personally, because this is a show about honesty, help me reprogram my fandom a little bit.
I always liked seeing like Gary react to like the AP poll, and it was like, well, I'd have these 7 SEC schools in the top 8. Okay, Gary, who is also, by the way, a son of the Midwest.
Yeah,
went to Purdue. From Michigan. So maybe he didn't love being the guy on the call for the third biggest Big Ten game, and was like, you know what, I'm ready to hang it up.
I'm still not used to the new broadcasting thing, by the way. Not just the booths, but which games are on which networks, and the NBC game on Saturday nights. Like I like
a little Peacock action going.
Peacock thing. I realize that media is very fragmented now, and that's going to continue to being a trend. There was actually a news story that just came out today about the NFL is going to opt out of its contract in 2029 because media is more fragmented. They want to bid it out to a bunch of different places. Obviously, that serves the pocketbook well. It doesn't serve us all that well. It makes it more difficult.
NFL chasing money?
I know.
Football chasing money. I was
as shocked as you.
Could you even imagine if the NFL went to Saudi Arabia looking for more money? Oh, they already are. Great. Cool. Good job, everybody.
I only have a few other bullet points here.
Yeah.
We mentioned one earlier, and it kind of got me thinking along these lines, but we're talking about spring football. We were talking about Colorado and some of what they attempted to do. Talked a little bit about Julian Lewis. Their 4-star quarterback recruit, reclassified. He's now on campus practicing. Pete Nakos, a friend over at On3, who does intrepid reporting on some of these rumor mill type stories, had a couple pieces actually recently where he's talking about quarterback battles and just some of the early feedback that he is hearing from some of his sources that I thought might be interesting to dissect a little bit here. It's not news per se, but just something maybe to keep your eye on. Again, if you are tuning out college football or have been tuning out college football so far this offseason, here is where some of these races stand per Pete. Okay. By the way, we need a nickname for Pete. We're going to have him on at some point.
Okay.
I think we need a nickname. I said to you, we should go by Peter.
Okay.
I think maybe it gives a little bit more gravitas to that, but we need a nickname for Pete by the time he comes on this show, because again, my understanding is that Andy and Ari gave him one, but we can do better. We can do better than them.
All right. What I suggested NACOM, and you said that was too.
I don't want that.
I think I agree.
I don't want that. I thought about Pistol Pete, but that's already taken.
Yeah.
So regardless, you and I need to kind of take this way and do some of our own personal study. But right now, Caden Salter seemingly is a clubhouse leader in Colorado, but there are what seems like varying opinions over Julian Lewis, whether we're going to make it to mid-season and he's going to challenge for that job, whether he's going to win that job outright in Colorado. But it seems like Caden Salter, the transfer from Liberty, and Julian Lewis, the freshman, those are going to be the two names to watch at Colorado. A bunch of other quarterback races to put on your radar, right? Seems like Julian Sayan's going to be the guy at Ohio State. Not much of a race there. Everybody is raving about Julian Sayan.
Right.
Carson Beck, obviously going to be the guy at Miami. Seems like his recovery, he had the elbow thing in the playoffs. His recovery is on schedule. He's doing well. John Mateer, quote, everything we thought he was and more at Oklahoma.
Great. Love to hear
He better be, because they needed offense this year, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody doubted John Mateer coming in after what he was able to put on film last year for Wazoo. The question is, who's protecting him? Who's he throwing to? Deion Burks, I think, is back. They've recruited somewhat well at receiver, but it's what does the offense look like, obviously under John Mateer's coordinator at Washington State, and how protected will he be? And, does everything come together quick enough for an SEC schedule?
We'll see. We are still material girls here on this show.
Zero doubt that he's good.
I like John Mateer.
Yeah.
I would like it more for Oklahoma if he were good there as well.
Who do they have? They have Michigan's defense in week 2. They're bringing in Michigan. Okay.
Yeah. Speaking of Michigan,
yeah,
these are the two quarterback battles that I am watching the most outside of Notre Dame, at least for the moment.
Yeah.
Per Pete, Bryce Underwood, the all-world everything freshman, is trending towards being the day one starter at Michigan. So you may recall we talked a little bit about them bringing in Mikey Keene, the transfer, Fresno State, Fresno State,
UCF.
Before that, UCF. He's been a couple places. Mikey Keene is still yet to throw because I guess he's dealing with some of his own injury stuff.
Right.
So right now, Bryce Underwood turning some heads. He is trending towards being the starter. If you've seen any of the photos of Bryce Underwood, he is a god among men, a god among boys.
This is a 17-year-old. Careful.
No, I'm just saying he's enormous as compared to those around him.
For a freshman, yes, definitely.
For a freshman, he's huge. So Bryce Underwood trending towards being that starter on day one, which I think would be notable. And the quarterback battle down at Alabama is getting interesting. Austin Mack, I believe the transfer from Washington, yes?
Yeah, followed Kalen DeBoer, and obviously Ryan Grubb overlapped with him at Washington as well. Yeah.
Austin Mack is, quote, turning heads at Alabama. This figures to be a three-way race between Mack, Ty Simpson, and Keelan Russell,
the freshman,
who is their big-time freshman, who is also on campus as well. So that will be an interesting situation to follow. I know you and I talked a little bit about Austin Mack when Kalen DeBoer took that job, and there was at least some thought that maybe he would turn to some guys that he knew from Washington. Obviously, Jalen Milroe was quite good and is going to get drafted pretty high in this upcoming draft, so there's a reason that they stuck with him. But now that it's a fresh slate, we'll see which direction DeBoer decides to go.
So here's what's notable. I would, if I were running a team, I would do everything I could to make sure a true freshman was not starting at quarterback, especially if I were at a huge place. So Alabama has Wisconsin, Florida State, and Georgia in September, yes? Just in terms of the possibility of Keelan Russell starting for Alabama. Michigan is at Oklahoma and I believe at Nebraska. Two teams that, say what you will about their ceilings, should have good to really good defenses. Right? Nebraska and Oklahoma on the road, playing in difficult places to play. I don't mind it if a team starts a true freshman a little bit if they're built to accommodate the lines in place, the running games in place, so that people are going to respect play action and the play action fakes, and he can roll out and hit easy passes to an H-back or tight end or a slot receiver sitting in the zone or something. The defense is in place where they don't need to score 35 points on offense to win games. Michigan doesn't strike me as that team right now. That is just a quarterback away from achieving its goals this year. Now, if Mikey Keene's not healthy, And Bryce Underwood, I think, is Davis Warren still there?
Davis Warren's still there, but he's recovering.
Right, he's
from
hurt too.
Yeah.
So if Bryce Underwood's literally the only option, or it's so plain and clear that against Michigan's first team defense, he is acquitting himself super well, then you're like, okay, well, I guess that's the move. I would avoid it for as long as possible. Like, even Trevor Lawrence didn't start the season as a true freshman. He was given mental reps. He was given practice reps during the season, cleanup duty. Like, there was a little bit of an adjustment period that was allotted for Trevor Lawrence. And we saw it last year with, I'm trying to think of who the big true freshman that played at big plate, like Dylan Raiola, was not particularly impressive. Doesn't mean he won't be moving forward, but he was an underwhelming quarterback in year one, largely because the offense could not accommodate his inexperience.
Now, I'll say this about Michigan. Yeah. It does seem as if there has been much more of a renewed focus this offseason about trying to go out and get receivers, trying to go out
but
there
they got
offense.
Donovan McCulley from Indiana, but otherwise it's kind of the same group. They have promising guys at tight end, as we saw, was Hogan Hansen, who played well in the bowl game. But otherwise, I don't think the line's going to be especially good. They went after portal guys on the line, so maybe it'll be improved. Defense loses absolute star power, but there's still guys there. I don't want, for the sake of Michigan's long-term health, I don't want Bryce Underwood to play in games that are going to set him back, like emotionally and mentally, because he wasn't ready to step in as a 17, 18-year-old and throw into the teeth of the Oklahoma defense, throw into the teeth of the Nebraska defense, and whoever's on their schedule this year. That, like, he should play when he's ready, not because he's better, like, on a practice field, and it seems like he should get reps because he's such a high profile name and we're paying him all this money. Like, wait till he's fully baked, whenever that is. If you really think he's fully baked on Labor Day, I guess roll with it. But we don't really see those guys all that often.
You're starting to see a lot of comments to the effect of, it comes out of his hand different.
Yeah.
When he throws the ball, the angel gets its wings type of stuff.
It's so much to put on a kid. It's so much. At a place like Michigan, as a true freshman, it's just so much to put on him from day one. And you want him to be comfortable. So you get the best version of him. And sometimes playing a guy too soon, it can be a setback. And so I'm trying to, MVB at Mississippi State had some good moments, but that was not a team that was built to accommodate his inexperience. And so we'll see. But yeah, I hope for his sake that he is extended a comfortable amount of time to get ready.
Why don't we leave it there on this news show on April 1st? I can assure you all of this stuff.
Who's Notre Dame's quarterback going to be? CJ Carr? Is that just like kind of done deal?
I think it's going to be CJ Carr.
Okay.
I think it should be CJ Carr.
Are they going to lose either of the guys behind him after the spring portal?
I can't see how they wouldn't.
Right.
I think at least somebody's going to defect.
Yeah.
I think that's my expectation anyway.
Yeah.
Because it might be Angeli to start the year on the road against Miami. Notre Dame's schedule is crazy front loaded this coming season. It's a tough schedule this year for Notre Dame. So it wouldn't surprise me if Angeli gets a start on the road against Miami, but I think there's an understanding within the football program that CJ Carr is the one with the highest ceiling.
And by the way, if it is CJ Carr, and this goes for a lot of different programs that have the amazing problem of having too many quality looking guys in the quarterback room, which is not a lot, but the spring game on the flip side, that if like Marcus Freeman in his head and from what he's seen, he's like, CJ Carr is going to be our guy, that the spring game could be a really cool opportunity for Angeli and Kenny Minchey to kind of like put their abilities on display on NBC, because there are going to be programs across this great land, Ty, that are going to go through spring practice, are going to play in their spring game. The offensive coaches room is going to come together and they're going to say, I don't think we got a guy. Let's take a look at who popped in their spring game. Let's take a look at who in this spring portal is disappointed that they didn't win the job perhaps closely. And let's get Ty Simpson here. Let's get, Steve Angeli here, because it seems like at least their floor is fine. We can work with it. And so
yeah, I would be
that'll be
personally
the spring portal.
I would be surprised if Minchie
Hung around,
sticks around. Yeah, and that's not based on anything, but just it doesn't seem to me like there's a path to him playing, and I know he's pretty highly regarded as a prospect, but if his path is blocked, he'd be best served to go somewhere else,
right,
and get some time. I mean, it's just what would make the most sense, but we'll see.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, post spring portal is when you're, I guess, the most desperate, right? It's your last chance to get a guy.
Pretty much. Yeah. Pretty much. Write in solidverbal at gmail.com. Let us know your thoughts on these news stories, what we got right, what we got wrong. April Fool's Day pranks. If that is your jam, let us know.
Yeah.
I did do an extended prank, and it wasn't an April Fool's Day.
It was for no reason.
No reason whatsoever.
Yeah.
Some friends and I did this to East Coast Elliott back in the day.
Yeah.
And that was definitely more of a team effort. I will say I did it recently to my mother-in-law, with Kate's blessing. And this prank involves something that we came up with as a collective, and then I carried through with recently, called Cat Facts.
Yeah.
And what we did is via a Google Voice. It's probably against the law. I'm probably going to be indicted for this. But through a Google Voice number, we would text random facts about cats. I believe you can actually sign up for this service, by the way. There is a service that will do this
Why
for
wouldn't
you.
Yeah.
We chose the manual approach. We got more satisfaction that way. But we would, at random hours throughout the course of a day, text a very, very goofy fact about a cat to whoever the target was.
Mm-hmm.
And we would put that text at the bottom, like text 2 to unsubscribe or whatever. And every time somebody would text back with a 2 or stop or anything like that, we would accelerate how many text messages we sent.
Sure, of course.
You can imagine back when I was working the mysterious day job, this was a real hoot, and this is a great distraction from work that we did not give a damn about.
Sounds like the work of people who don't have a ton going on during the day.
That's exactly right. Yeah. That's exactly right. So the more recent example, we didn't go full bore the way we did when we did it on East Coast Elliott years ago. But there was probably a point in time where we were texting him, or actually it wasn't East Coast Elliott. He was involved in the planning. It was a different friend who was the target.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're sending like 8 text messages a day, driving my other friend crazy. This is before you had spam filters and things of that nature, so there was really no way around it.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually we ended up telling him, but I think we went for about 6 weeks with that. I think we lasted a good long time with that stupid cat facts thing, to the point where we were running out of facts about cats.
Yeah. Meanwhile, you've become kind of an expert on all things feline. Yeah.
It will shock you to learn that I was single at the time that we pulled this prank.
Yeah. That's quite the shocker. Yeah, the definition of a prank, because basically you just talked about cyber stalking and cyberbullying as
a little. I mean, notes of both, I'd say.
Right. Yeah. I don't know.
It was a good friend. It was a close friend.
It was a different time.
It was a different time.
All right.
Anyway, I'd love to hear your pranks. Mine is far more docile than some of the other ones I've heard of out there. But it's allverbal@gmail.com. I would love to hear about them. Me personally, as a resident prankster here on the show.
Yeah. Good goof, Ty.
Thank you. I can tell you do not approve.
Good goof. No, I've just heard the story before. I enjoyed it. See, it's funny. The East Coast Elliott one isn't as funny as doing it to your mother-in-law, because she is a middle-aged lady who probably doesn't just know how to block contact in the phone.
Oh, no. She called Apple on me.
Oh, she called Apple. She really tried.
She knows what she's doing. Yeah. No. Don't sell her short. So she knows what she's doing.
Did you just create a new Google Voice number when she blocked you?
No, I didn't know she blocked me.
Oh.
She's like, well, I fixed it because we didn't hear anything about it. We're like, is she still getting the messages? We didn't hear anything about it. She's like, no, I called Apple. I reported it as spam. No.
Yeah.
She is a force to be reckoned with. So it didn't work as well as it did years prior before we had, some of these newfangled ways to prevent against spam.
By the way, think about how insane it is. I think the statute of limitations is up on this. Like original AOL, they had the different, I don't know if they were phishing bots. You could replicate people's email addresses and people's screen names.
Yeah, you could.
I guess it wasn't through AOL necessarily, but there were apps you could download.
All of those tools.
Yeah. And I could just email somebody from your email address. And you'd have to look into the sending data to discover that it wasn't truly, I don't know, is your email address out there? I don't know. TyHildenbrand@gmail.com. I could just send that email and be like, Ty sent an email to so-and-so, and that we were 11 years old with that ability. It's completely insane. Completely insane.
Oh, God.
Yeah, that's all.
We were young and full of life. For that guy over there, my good friend Dan Rubenstein, for myself, Ty Hildebrand, thanks for hanging with us. Hopefully you got your hit of news here in the college football offseason. We'll be back a little later this week, talk more about this fine sport.
Yes.
In the meantime, you know the drill. Stay solid.
Peace.